What's good? What's good, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of The Urban Platform Speaks. Make sure to like and subscribe as you tune into the channel and check out the content. And with that being said, I want to discuss some comments that Paul Pierce made about LeBron James, right? And the point of me discussing this is because to me it just shows that uh, players and who face LeBron James, his I guess you could say his past competitors, they don't really have a lot of respect for LeBron James. And LeBron James, his situation is different than a lot of other guys, most other guys who was considered to be some of the best basketball players to have ever lived. Anytime you hear somebody talk about or speak about Larry Bird, Magic Johnson, Isaiah Thomas, any of the greats, right? Patrick Ewing, Dominique Wilkins, right? They always and they really never talk about like what we could have did to them, what we should have did to them, or they always talk about like the situation uh from a realistic standpoint, like what really happened, right? And the reason why they do that, number one, is because they just have so much respect for each other as competitors, and so you don't want to, as an ex basketball player, to get called out and say, well, you have revisionist history, sort of like the situation with Tracy McGrady when he, like the way he got drugged when he said that if he was on those Lakers teams with Shaq, he deserved to get drugged for that, right? Because all you can do as a competitor is just put your resume out there, right? And so when Tracy McGrady said, if you switch me out for Kobe and you put me on those Lakers team, then we win rings too. And fans started to drag him, right? And they started to point out the imperfections in his game and why he wasn't as good as Kobe. So that's something that most basketball players, elite basketball players, they're going to avoid that. It don't even occur to them to do that. Well, so when Paul Pierce said that recently on Shannon Sharp's show that he would, they would have beat LeBron James, I just thought that part of that is because LeBron James never really gained the respect of his peers the way other great basketball players did, right? And so with that being said, let me play what Paul Pierce was saying in this interview with Shannon Sharp. Then I'm gonna come back and give some more input.
If we were the same age, I don't believe he would have had 4 championships. He wouldn't have got.
You kept him before.
He wouldn't have got those 2 in Miami. Because I gotta believe if we're the same age and I could offset him, and that would have been good enough.
Right.
Like if he had got 40 in Game 6 and we the same, I would probably would have got 40 and offset him.
Right.
I was at an older age then, a lot of miles and stuff, and it was hard for me to keep up with him. I ain't gonna lie. I'll be looking at that tape shredder and I'm like, damn, I couldn't even move. Like, so younger, I could have moved with him, but I'm like,
because in Brooklyn, you say you got it. You gonna dig him up in Brooklyn. I don't know what you was on that
my
day.
mind and body say 2 different things.
Your mind was saying one thing, that body said, "Nah, I ain't
got him." I thought I did.
That's cold Shannon to get.
All right. So you heard what Paul Pierce said, right? And Paul Pierce is not really getting a lot of pushback for that. Why? Part of that, I think, is because some people believe that that's true. That if Paul Pierce was a little bit younger, he would not have, LeBron James wouldn't have got those rings down there in Miami. So that's still revisionist history. But I just want to focus on the fact that, I just think that LeBron James, he just never earned the respect of his peers. I never hear anybody like Patrick Ewing never, come out and say that, well, we could have beat Mike, if it wasn't for this. Or Charles Barkley never say, well, we could have beat Mike if it wasn't for that. They just accept the reality. They acknowledge that Mike was great, right? And I think when you as a basketball player, when you do that, when you acknowledge that you got beat by somebody that's better than you, it's number one, it's easier to accept. And then number two, you basically being honest about history and what has happened. So fans not going to drag you for that. And it's the same thing with Paul Pierce. People think that he's being honest about the history. Paul Pierce said in this clip that, he could have offset if he was younger than LeBron. If he was a little bit younger, he would have been able to offset LeBron James. And there's nothing when you go back and you look at that game and the history of that game, there's nothing to say that, what Paul Pierce was saying was wrong. Because if you look at it also, Paul Pierce, even though he was up in age and he had miles on him, he still was putting in that work. And for his age, he was a pretty good defender at that time, right? So just imagine if Paul Pierce was a little bit younger, things probably would have been different. So that's why I just say, the way LeBron James has conducted himself throughout, his career, he just set himself up for these type of situations when people know that, you benefited from time and circumstances more so than you did from, being able to just put that work in. Just like when you think about the bubble championship, right? People didn't, most basketball players, because of what was going on at that time, they didn't even want to play basketball. Right. And so LeBron James and the Lakers, they just said, people said, well, they benefited from that. No travel, no fans, no hostile environment. So they benefited from that. And that's been the same way with LeBron James' career. When people think about, well, he's always cherry picked and he's always tried to stack his teams and stuff like that. Again, you can't recall situations where LeBron James just, they're like he just carried his team to victory. It wasn't about, he benefited from a call. He benefited from a certain circumstances. He benefited from stacking the team or something like that, right? And so that's why Paul Pierce was not really getting a lot of pushback. That's why LeBron James, his peers and people who played against him, they feel free to say things like this and speak up because, again, and then on top of that, LeBron James really put himself in a situation with declaring himself the GOAT. Once he went in 2016 and declared himself the GOAT, then you open yourself up for all different types of scrutiny. People really going to analyze your game, and that's why we are here where we at now. Like everybody just want to talk about they just want to set the record straight. And when you have so many people talking about LeBron James the way they talking about him, everybody can't be lying. You have some people in the media saying one thing, but you having his peers and the fans saying totally something different, right? His peers don't have an agenda. The fans don't have an agenda, especially older fans who just appreciate the game of basketball. They just, they just want the truth to be told. So, LeBron James opened himself up to this situation by declaring himself the GOAT, number one, and then not really like when you have competitors or you're in competition, you can't leave any doubt. Like, people started comparing Michael Jordan to Clyde Drexler, right? And when Michael Jordan saw Clyde Drexler, he just made it his business, man, to just let it be known, on the court that there was no competition between Michael Jordan and Clyde Drexler. And that was everybody. Or if somebody, I remember Karl Malone won that. He won one year. He won the MVP, right? And people said that Michael Jordan should have been the MVP. And so Michael Jordan went out and just destroyed Karl Malone and the Utah Jazz, 2 times in a row at the, in the championship. So there could be no it can be no debate. Mike never left room for debate, and that's what LeBron did. He left room for debate. So that's my take on it. Make sure to like and subscribe. Also, don't forget to leave a comment. And with that being said, man, I'm gonna check y'all out in the next video. Peace.